What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Hangover. Welcome back to the Steel Curtain Network, a fans first sports network partnership. I guess that's how you can say it. I'm your host, Daniel. Alongside with me, as always, is Shannon. Shannon, how you doing?
I'm doing awesome, brother Daniel, and just had a beautiful day here and sunny, wonderful, wild West Virginia. So yeah, it's been a good day, and I'm ready to talk some Steelers football.
Oh, that's awesome, man. It's been a crazy week here, man. Out here in Texas, the weather's gone up, it's gone down, it's gone back up, and I think it's supposed to hit like 85, 90, and then it's supposed to drop back down to the 40s. So who knows what's going to happen? It's
Yeah,
bipolar. No one knows.
yeah.
But today we're going to be talking about, today on the Hangover, we're going to be talking about is youth versus experience. And we'll get into that in a second. First, I want to ask you, Bud Dupree showed up, no contract. What are your thoughts?
I was shocked because everybody's like, well, usually people come and visit with the Steelers. They usually don't leave without signing a contract.
Right.
Just that's just the way it's always been in the past. But everything's changing. Khan and Waddle, they do things different. And I think they wanted to kick the tires and talk to him, see what kind of money he's wanting. He went. They give him a physical. I've seen reported. So they might be waiting to, go over that and then see. A lot of it'll tell us a lot if they sign him before the draft versus waiting till after the draft. He wants to be signed before the draft if at all possible.
Right.
But
Right.
the Steelers, they might be an edge guy there that I haven't really thought about that as a big area of need. But the Steelers, they love their edge guys. So they might be looking for somebody there to fall around 17 or 32. And so they might wanted to kick the tires, but they might be kind of wanting to wait to see what happens.
Yeah, that makes sense, and I think it makes sense for both parties. To be honest with you, I think the Steelers want to see what they can grab in the draft, and I think Bud Dupree wants to see if there's an option out there where he can get more playing time, show his worth, and perhaps bring in a little bit more dough into his pocket. And so, I think it would be a good match to bring him back. I think this is the place where Pittsburgh was a place where he was his most successful. He's comfortable. He knows the players. He's familiar with the linebacker room and the players that are there, obviously. And so I hope it turns around and he ends up signing. We'll see. We'll see. But the Steelers are going to need to fill that position. But since we also last spoke, there was two new additions to the Pittsburgh Steelers. There was first, it was safety Keanu Neal, former first round pick, if I'm correct. And the second one was Brandon Fehoko, who was an undrafted defensive interior lineman out of LSU, who in the last year had about 3 starts, played noticeably, looks very good against the run. What are your thoughts on those two additions? We'll start off with Keanu. Is he, well, one, do you think that's is that a better option than Terrell Edmonds, an equal option, or a worse option?
I would hesitate to say an equal option, only because Neal, his big weakness is his foot speed. He does not have 4.4 something speed like Edmonds had. Edmonds was kind of like a custodian of the defense. Nobody appreciated him until he wasn't there to clean up the mess. That's what Edmonds did. When they were missed tackles or blown coverages, he ran guys down. And so he was kind of like, he cleaned up the mess, so to speak. Neal, on the other hand, is the ultimate box safety. He's very similar to Edmonds in that regard, is that he likes to play up at the line and he hits. I mean, he's a hard hitter. He'll draw some penalties because when he has an opportunity, he lets guys know he was there. And he sticks them. So I think that in the running game, his physicality around the line of scrimmage, I think he'll be able to duplicate a lot of what the Steelers have lost with Edmonds' absence now. The things he won't be able to duplicate is he's not going to be able to shut down tight ends as good as Edmonds did. And he won't be that eraser that safe security blanket on the back end. So
Right.
that's my main concern is the Steelers have gotten smarter. I think he's got better ball skills than Edmonds had, just by the number of interceptions and plays he's had in his career. But I just think that they've gotten a little slower, at least at the safety position.
Right. And the other thing also I would say that I would lean towards Terrell Edmonds is availability. With
Yeah.
Neal, he's had a lot of injury. He's been I think he's only had I think 2 or 3 seasons where he played majority of the season. Yeah, I think he had an Achilles tendon rupture as well, which is a I've had that happen to me. I'm not the same. Now, again, I'm not a professional athlete with a pro athlete body or anything like that, but that injury, yeah, I wasn't the same person prior to it, and so that injury affects people differently, though. Him coming back, him being a primarily, I think in his last 2 seasons was primarily like a fill-in guy. He was more like depth than he was a starter. I think that that's going to be his similar role here with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think that he's going to be in that 3 safety set and being that guy in the box, being that guy up front, and allow KZ and Minka Fitzpatrick to cover deep, and read the quarterback, so to speak. And so I'm excited about it. Do you think that this signing, though, stops the Steelers from looking at a safety in the draft?
I wish the Steelers had like a legit 10 picks. Because there is some safeties later, in that 4th, 5th round range that I think could be projects that have, excellent height, weight, and solid speed that might need a little seasoning, get some experience to learn the NFL craft. So I would like to see the Steelers address that, but there's multiple positions that are not huge needs now, but still it would be preferable to address in those middle rounds. But the Steelers have some picks in the first 4 rounds and then nothing to the 7th. So that's a little disappointing. If they can trade back, maybe acquire some picks, more picks in the 4th and 5th, I think that would be beneficial to address an area like strong safety.
I agree. It's going to be when you look at who the Steelers have brought in, they've only brought in 1 safety as far as pre-draft visits. I'm sure they're going to be bringing in a few more. I think they can bring in, how many is it, 30 per year?
30, yeah.
Is that it? So I think they're at 16. So they're just past the halfway point. So we'll see how that fills out. But yeah, I think that bringing in Neal kind of limits the desperate need for that position. And so it doesn't need to be addressed unless there's somebody of major talent fall to a certain area.
They don't want to reach.
Yeah,
they
exactly.
definitely don't want to reach. That never pans out well. Even if the guy has a good career like Terrell Edmonds, he was never a first-round selection, and the Steelers reached, and then nobody will ever let him forget it. So we don't want to see him reach for any position.
No, you're 100% accurate on that one. That's for sure. The next guy that the Steelers brought in was former Los Angeles Chargers defensive tackle Brendan Fehoko. I hope I pronounced that right. Interior nose tackle type, depth to Martavius Adams, in my opinion. I think this is a guy that's you're going to put in the middle. You're going to put him in the middle when you're going up against the Baltimore Ravens, when you're going up against the Cleveland Browns and Nick Chubb, and be a guy to take up space. He's not a guy that's going to get a lot of sacks or a lot of pressures on your quarterback, things of that nature. And so, he's going to take up space and allow those newly acquired middle linebackers to eat. And so I'm excited about him. What are your thoughts on that acquisition?
I've been waiting all day to talk about Fehoko. The reason I'm so excited is he's a fellow round belly. I mean, he is not a pass rusher in any way. He's not a quick twitch athlete. He's not a penetrator. In other words, he's the opposite of Montravius Adams. The reason I'm so excited is because I did not know who he was. So on Thursday, when the report came out that they signed Neal and they signed Fehoko, I was like, who? And I'm embarrassed to say that I should have known who he was, because when I was doing the article and the research for Drew Tranquil, who was the Chargers linebacker, there was multiple times in the film I'd be like, I mean, the Steelers need a lineman like that. They need a nose tackle like that. Because all he does is tie blockers. And he moves with the blockers, and he just takes away holes, takes away running lanes. He willingly sacrifices any statistics. He don't put any statistics out there. But the guys behind him rack up statistics. So he's one of them guys that's a selfless, team first, lunch pail type. And he don't care if he gets the tackle. He wants to tie up blockers and blow up that running scheme. I'm very excited about him. He reminds me of Tyson Alulu in that ability to take on multiple blockers, not give ground. When he come out of LSU, he won a national championship with LSU. When he come out, he was undrafted, and the Chargers took him. And he was always practice squad, active roster, practice squad, active. He was back and forth. He's had 4 starts, like 30-some tackles, and no sacks, no force. 1 tackle for loss. That's not his game. His game is a disruptor. As far as you have a plan. We want to run in the A gap, and he's going to take that away. Or we're going to run, he ties up blockers. And he's the kind of guy that the teammates are going to love him. Now, he's a wine. I mean, he's from Honolulu, and he likes to do the haka, or if I'm saying that right, they do the warrior dance before the games. Him and his family, the fans are going to eat that up. We're all going to love it. He brings a warrior's mentality. The reason I know so much, because I knew nothing about him, but I've got an article that I just wrote about him, and now he's bringing the warrior's mentality to Pittsburgh. And that is infectious. That is contagious. He gets in that locker room, and his teammates loved him. LSU fan base loved him. The Chargers fan base, if you go to their podcast and read some of their articles in the discussion threads, people are pissed that they let him go. Because that's all he did. I mean, he wasn't flashy. He didn't put stats up, but he come in and he tied up blockers. And when he was in the game, the Chargers have a very unimpressive, underwhelming defensive line rotation. When he was in there, their running game was substantially better. Their running defense was substantially better than when he wasn't. And that's what the Steelers have needed. When Alulu was hurt 2 years ago, they tried Wormley, they tried Loudermilk, different people, Adams late in the year, and nobody could hold up double teams and could, stand their ground and anchor. This kid, it's hilarious. They got him listed at 6'3", 300. Man, that was a long time ago when he was 300 pounds. I mean, he's put on the weight and his lower body's thickened up, so he anchors very well. Low center of gravity. He wins through effort and leverage.
Right.
And I'm very excited about him. Of all the guys that they've signed in free agency, this kid looks like an afterthought. But don't be shocked if he ain't the starting nose tackle for the Pittsburgh Steelers when the season starts, and he's kind of a placeholder and a mentor for whoever they pick up in the draft. Because I do think they're going to try to get a big defensive tackle somewhere early in the draft. And This guy is perfect as a mentor, as a teammate. I think the fans is going to love him, and I think he's going to be a really good fit in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I agree. And I did look into that. So when the Steelers acquired him, of course, I obviously did the same thing, and I saw the Chargers fan base and some of the articles that you mentioned state that the fans, they're going to feel this one. This was going to sting a little bit.
Yeah,
this was a locker room guy. This was a guy that was a team first guy, and I'm glad that the Steelers acquired him, and he seemed excited. He went to Twitter when he got signed as well. And so, I think this is a dream match. He looks like a young Tyson Alualu to me, a little bit bigger, but but a young Tyson Alualu. And I think he has that, aggressiveness and that nastiness that you were speaking about as well. One of my good friends is actually a Chargers fan, and I got to talk to him a little bit about it. And so I'm excited to have him on board. You think is he going to be wearing 96? Is that out yet?
I've not heard. I mean, I know that's what he did wear for the Chargers, but I think it'd be good. I think that I'd like to see him in 96. It's funny. You look at Samalu and Holcomb for that matter, and Fehoko. These guys got some great hair, man. I mean, he loved Troy Polamalu growing up.
Yeah.
And in times when he lets it grow out, he looks like he got some Troy Polamalu hair. So, he'll get out there and make a big stop, get out there and do that dance, and then take that helmet off and let that hair fall. He play the renegade at the same time as people will lose their mind.
Oh, dude. I can't wait, man. I can't wait. I'll be at one of those games. Looking forward to that. But speaking about who he may be mentoring, the Steelers have brought in 16 pre-draft visits players so far. And in my opinion, it's very heavy cornerback based right now. You have, 5? Keely Ringo, Joey Porter, Emmanuel Forbes, Julius Brents, Tyreek Stevenson that have come in. Does that tell you that the Steelers are going to go cornerback at 17? Or do you think that's just doing their due diligence?
Well, do we believe what they're saying?
That's true.
I mean, last year, the Steelers looked at every quarterback. I mean, if they would have been a guy in Australia that, said that he might have talent, I think they'd have went there and sent somebody to take a look at him. They did their due diligence last year on quarterback. Well, who was the first round pick? Kenny Pickett. This year, they've looked at more cornerbacks and defensive linemen than any position. And in my opinion, that, I'm talking about that the Senior Bowl, the Combine, Pro Days, they've really focused on cornerback and defensive line. Offensive line a little bit less, but they're trying to build the right way. And I think that's common, but I think a lot of it's Weidl's influence. And so I'm believing them, and I'm thinking that even if it ain't the 17th pick, that early first or second round, they are going to pick a cornerback, hopefully cornerback 1 for the future. And that's why they brought in Patrick Peterson so he can mentor him.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking as well. Especially when Mike Tomlin mentioned the fact that he might be playing certain packages where he could be moving over to safety. If he ends up moving over to safety, somebody has to replace him as a cornerback, right? And so, that would be a good position for a young rookie cornerback to come into, because they only have to learn part of the playbook at a time. They don't have to learn everything. And so, I'm for one thinking that's probably the angle that they're going. They brought in a few linemen for the pre-draft visits. DeJuan Jones, this is a guy that you were high on and you've been high on as well. They bring him in. Where do you see DeJuan Jones going in the draft? Do the Steelers have to take him at 17, or do you think he can make it all the way to 32?
I think he'll make it to 32, right in that range. He might go a couple picks early because people know, it's funny this year. It all depends a lot of it on the quarterbacks. I think if like 4 to 5 quarterbacks get taken, at least 4 in that first round, that's good. It's going to help knock some guys down to 17 for the Steelers. Then if one of them, let's say Levis, falls to 32, that will put the Steelers in a great position because teams are going to want to move up, who was waiting on him. Well, Steelers have all night to think about it and the next day to field offers. And, for multiple selections for a team to move at that 32nd spot. If nobody, that doesn't happen, then I can see DeJuan Jones going at number 32. I think 17's too early.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think he can be a dominant right tackle. I question his ability to play left tackle.
Mm-hmm.
He's got the size to reach everything, but he doesn't move laterally that well. and we know where most of your top pass rushers come off that left side.
Right.
So I think that his value is at right tackle, and I think 32 is a prime position. So if he falls that far, the Steelers, they'll hold all the leverage. They can just take him if that's who they like, or they can trade that, maybe move down just a few picks, accumulate extra picks, and still get him.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think that, based on what you're saying, I think you're right. You would put him at the right tackle position, especially if he has an issue moving laterally and you're going up against the opposition's best outside linebacker. If the Steelers ended up drafting him, would you see the Steelers moving Chooks over to the right or keeping Dan Moore or moving Dan Moore? I'm sorry, keeping Dan Moore at the left or moving Chooks to the left? I'm sorry, got that backwards.
Well, something I wanted to see happen last year that the Steelers didn't do was during camp and the preseason, move these guys around. They have incredible versatility and position flexibility in that interior offensive line. They had it last year. They really got it now with Samalu and Daniels and Herbig and Cole. They can all play center or either guard.
Right.
But if they would take a guy like Juwan Jones, let him maybe try him out on the left side, see what he looks like. Mm-hmm. And rotate them guys, play them on different sides. If you let Jones play a little bit of left tackle in a preseason game, let Moore and Okorafor man the right side and see how they do. Everybody says, well, Okorafor, they tried him at left tackle and he didn't do good. Well, that's true. But anybody that really realizes and knows anything about Okorafor, the young man didn't start playing football till late in his teens, and he come over to the United States, and he was always passive, great athlete, great footwork, but he wasn't mean, he wasn't nasty at all. But last year you started to see him come out of his shell and get in some shoving matches and some shouting matches and a little bit of activity after the whistle. Nothing cheap or dirty, but, still a little bit of pushing and shoving. And he stood up more for himself. And I seen a little bit of dog come out in him. And I think that he gained a lot of confidence last year. He had his best season. He played next to Daniels, and I think he learned a lot. And he was comfortable. When he was next to Dotson's rookie year, and they played on that right side there when DeCastro was out, that was some of the best football Okorafor ever played as well. I think he needs to play next to who he plays next to really influences his game.
Right.
So let's say you move him to left tackle. You take Juwan Jones, move Okorafor. Who's he going to be playing next to? Most likely Samalu. And that guy's a tactician. I mean, he's fundamentally superior. And what a guy to play next to. I think that would bring out the best in the Okorafor. It might bring out the best in Moore. So, but you can have two guys battling there. So I think regardless of what happens, the Steelers, if they was able to get Juwan Jones, are in a really favorable position next year.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you think he's a week one starter? Because I think he may not get a week one. I don't think he'd be the week one starter. I think he'd have to.
Tomlin don't start rookies if he don't have to.
Yeah, I think he'd go in there with Chooks and Moore starting it out, and maybe perhaps having Jones as a swing for a little bit, and then work his way in there. And obviously, if there's were to be something like an injury, then he would take one of their places, or they would move things around. But we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we're going to be talking about youth versus experience by position. So don't go anywhere. On the YouTube side, just sit tight. We're going to take a quick pause. Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking around. Before we get started, I wanted to tell you guys, if you guys haven't checked out the audio side only, there is so much podcast that comes out. I think it's like, a couple of them a day. Mm-hmm. I have my own that comes out on Saturdays at around noon. It's called State of the Steelers. Shannon, do you have some that are audio only, or is it just all on YouTube? And
I just have the two YouTube ones.
The two YouTube ones, yeah. But they're also on audio platforms. So if you're wanting to go for a drive or whatnot, don't want to use the YouTube and you just kind of want to put in the earbuds, you can go check that out. There's also Jeff Hartman's Let's Ride. You have Bad Language from Brian Anthony Davis, the Stat Geek with Dave Schofield, and so much more. So make sure you guys are checking that out. And also make sure you guys check out Fans First Sports Network. Not only do they have NFL out there, there's also other sports. So if you're interested in MLB, hockey, things like that, you can kind of follow through and check out their list of podcasters that may be able to find your other fix when it comes to sports that's not the Pittsburgh Steelers. And so, with all that out of the way, let's talk about youth versus experience. I think that obviously the combination of the two is kind of what you want to look for. When it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers, it appears to me that they're really heavily sided on one side, the defense with experience, and really heavy sided with inexperience and youth on the offensive side. How do you feel, first and foremost, about the way this team is being built in that manner where, like I said, a lot of those major pieces on offense are on rookie deals and the defense is the highest paid? What are your first initial thoughts and feelings about that aspect of it?
Well, I'm kind of glad about the youth movement on the offense because Kenny Pickett being your starting quarterback and hopefully for the foreseeable future, now whether he's a franchise quarterback, that only time will tell. If a guy can get you in the playoffs, win the big game, to me, I call a franchise quarterback a guy who at least gets a team to the Super Bowl, preferably wins the Super Bowl. Then, in my book, he's a franchise quarterback. Until you do that, a lot of times it's because there's red flags, there's weaknesses. You know, you take guys like Kirk Cousins, Jimmy Garoppolo. These guys have put up some big numbers and been very successful, really good winning percentages, get in the playoffs, and they can't get no farther. That is not a franchise quarterback, in my opinion. So my definition and a lot of people's is a little different. But you want a roster of a certain age that can grow with Kenny Pickett so that when he's hitting his prime years and, you know, they have that window, 2 to 3 year window to win a Super Bowl, that everybody has come along for the ride. There's familiarity, there's growth together, chemistry. And I like how the Steelers are doing this. You look at their offensive line. Everybody's going to be this year 27 or younger. That's impressive because they've all got 4 to 5 years experience pretty much, besides Dan Moore. So they're young still, conceivably still entering their prime, but they are young enough to grow with your rookie or second-year quarterback. You know, Najee's very young, Pat Freiermuth, Pickett's, all their, as you said, all their young guys on offense are been just added recently. And they are building, you know, that offensive line in front of them with guys who are relatively young but have a lot of experience. So that's a prime example of they've had a plan and they've really stuck to it on that offense.
I think so too. And I really do think that they built it up the right way. You know, because you're looking at, for instance, your left tackle and your quarterback, which would be arguably the most expensive positions on the offensive side. Covered with rookie contracts. Your receiver, I mean, he's not, with Deontay Johnson, he's not, in my opinion, a wide receiver one.
Nope.
That's just my opinion. I'll leave it at that. And so you don't have a wide receiver paycheck going out there. George Pickens, he has the ability to potentially become that. You know, I think he needs some fine-tooth learning when it comes to route running, you know, those type of things. But I think he has the ability to be a very, very special player. He's going to be on a rookie deal for the next couple of years. Pat Freiermuth is on a rookie deal this year. You know, he's our tight end who's also, you know, his trajectory is pointing upward. And so the only thing that's going to kind of be the downside to that is they're all going to want their paycheck at around the same time. And so, but, you know, that's a good problem to have, you know, because that would mean if they're going to earn that paycheck, that would have meant that they've done some really good things.
Yes.
And so I think it's now time for the defense. But there are certain positions that I can say that I think that experience in those positions are better than throwing in a young guy. I would say the offensive line. You don't necessarily need a young guy, and you can allow a young guy to grow. And with experience in that position, somebody who started off maybe not the best can end up being a solid player. Not so much with, for instance, like a running back. I think that's a short-lived position.
Yes.
You want youth there. And so what other positions on the offensive side do you feel, or what do you feel the positions on the offensive side that you would prefer experience at?
Well, one obvious one that Steelers learned the hard way is center.
Yeah.
Creed Humphrey, when he come out, I said he was the best center prospect I'd seen in years.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why is it's not just the physical talent. He almost scored a 10 on his RAS score. So he is very athletic for an interior offensive lineman. Built just like a center.
Mm-hmm.
But what impressed me is listening to him talk in interviews and with his father. When he started playing football, even in the little leagues, he was a center. He always wanted to be a center. He studied Mike Webster, Dermontti Dawson, Stevenson, all the great centers, Otto, all the ones from the past. He studied them. He wanted to be the best center and be mentioned in the same rarefied air as those guys. That's a mentality. So therefore, he has great leadership. He communicates so well with his teammates. And you see all that when he was at Oklahoma. So everybody was talking about this guy can play center or guard, or this guy can do, But to me, if I was drafting a pure center and going to start him as a rookie, I would have took Creed Humphreys because he knew what it took to be a starting center in the NFL. He just studied it. It's all he ever wanted to be.
Right.
It wasn't like he played defensive line in high school too, and maybe transitioned when he got to college. He was always the center. So that's why when they tried to turn Kendrick Green into a center, I loved his athleticism and his mobility, but he had no clue. Playing center is so much more responsibility than the other offensive line positions. Because you're trying to communicate with all five guys. You're in direct communication with the quarterback, any slight adjustments, and it's a lot. And you think a young guy like Kendrick Green, he did not handle that well at all. Mm-hmm. So beyond his size deficiencies and strength deficiencies, he had no experience. So, yeah, I was so glad when they brought in Cole. And we see what a difference it made just having somebody with experience.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Cole having that experience, being there. Do you think there's any hope for Kendrick Green? Do you think that he's going to be in the XFL soon?
In my opinion, and I hate to say this because I've really rooted for the young man. Mm-hmm. I wanted to see him be successful, but my heart dropped last training camp and preseason when they started trying him at guard, and he said that he was so glad they was letting him try at guard because he never felt comfortable at center and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, it's hard. And it's a responsibility. It's like the green dot at middle linebacker. Some guys want that responsibility. They accept that. They thrive in it. Other guys, he shuts them down. As I always say, paralysis of overanalysis.
Right.
You get a guy and they have to think too much. Some guys don't do anything. They want to do this, they want to do that, and they end up standing there. And that's what Kendrick Green did so many times. So the fact that he doesn't want to learn to play center at under 6'2", maybe 300 pounds with short arms, you're not playing NFL guard at his size. Yeah. So he's a center or he's nothing. So he doesn't want to learn to play center. So in my opinion, he's nothing.
Yeah. No, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, he was a worse guard than he was a center. And him being in the center position, I mean, the Steelers did Ben wrong, in my opinion, by
Oh,
having
Lord,
him
yeah.
there. Like, they should have pulled that plug way earlier. I mean, geez. I think if they had done that, I mean, Ben, maybe he plays another year because he feels better.
I'd have been scared if I was him.
Yeah, well, playing behind Kendrick Green, yeah, I would have to.
Yeah.
That was horrible. That was a horrible decision. But the Steelers are moving on. I don't think he'll be on the team after this, after training camp. I think he'll make it through training camp. The Steelers are going to give him that opportunity. Kendrick Green, that is. But I don't think he's going to make the 53. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. You got to cut your losses, and hopefully, when it comes to Omar Khan and his regime, is maybe perhaps they can identify when they've made a mistake a little bit sooner. That's been one of the things that I've kind of noticed about this team, is that they'll make a mistake like a Kendrick Green and allow him to play majority of the season. And instead of acknowledging, hey, we messed up on this third round pick, which, a third round pick isn't a guarantee.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
And so, you're risking your very aged Hall of Fame quarterback there by having him there. And so, it is what it is. Hopefully that aspect or that mentality can change. What about the quarterback position? Do you think that position is better suited for youth or for experience?
Actually, to win Super Bowls anymore, you want to have that quarterback on that rookie deal.
Yep.
Or, towards the end of that rookie deal, because there's that window where you can use that lower salary, because quarterback salaries are so astronomical. You can build the rest of that roster like the Eagles did last year, like the Niners did, and have a complete roster, and then you're so competitive and you're a true contender. Once you have to start paying $230 million to Deshaun Watson, however much Lamar Jackson is going to get, Josh Allen's coming up. We know what Mahomes is getting paid, but the way they done it, they were proactive and signed him way early, and then now they can maneuver and move money around. Eventually, it always comes due. But when you see what Mahomes is making versus Aaron Rodgers is close to $60 million?
Yeah.
I mean, that's insane. The Chiefs are still making moves. They're still, improving that football team. Some teams do it better than others. But if you have to pay a Russell Wilson, any of these guys, and being towards the end, you're going to sacrifice depth somewhere. So right now, I'm happy if Pickett proves in his sophomore season here, year 2 in the NFL, if he proves that or looks anything like he could be a potential franchise guy, then the Steelers are sitting pretty in the division, because we don't know what the Ravens are going to have at quarterback. The Browns are going to be overpaying forever, and Burrows, they're already starting them contract negotiations, and he's going to get paid a pretty penny. So the Steelers have an advantage that way.
I agree 100%. The quarterback position, you're right. It has to be either you have a quarterback on a rookie deal that you can afford to build the team around him, and hope that you build that quarterback to the point where once that talent goes elsewhere because you can't afford it, that the quarterback's play can elevate the team around them to get to that point. And so it's wait and see, and you got to see who you got. But for one, Terry Bradshaw thinks the Steelers got a guy. Did you see that? Or I think it was on Twitter, Terry Bradshaw and Kenny Pickett together.
Yeah, I did see the picture of him hugging him and everything. Yeah.
And so that's already on a better foot than Terry and Ben. So.
Yeah, that's for sure.
They're already going in the right direction. So
yeah.
That's another good step there. But I think having Pickett on a rookie deal also helps, like you said, build the team around them, and then also to build him. What is a stat that you're looking for Pickett when it comes to touchdown interceptions for the 2023 season?
I think we've seen so much improvement late in the year.
Right.
And he cut his interception total. I mean, it was minuscule.
Mm-hmm.
But in doing so, if you notice, when he was down around the red zone, when the field tightens up and you don't have as big a windows, he would throw the ball where his receiver can make a great catch and get a touchdown, but the defender had no shot at it.
Right.
When he first started playing, he was throwing 50-50 balls. And some of them was getting tipped and intercepted. You know, Claypool wouldn't come down with it, or it'd go through guys' hands. And I think he realized then Tomlin's like stressing ball security. We're going to run this football. The line's getting better. We're going to control time of possession. You protect the football. I think that they'll kind of loosen those reins a little bit this year. So I would like to see 20-some touchdowns and 8 to 10 interceptions. That is a good percentage. I mean, in the Steelers offense, that was really consistent with being through the years. Even when he hit 30 touchdowns, he'd have 12 interceptions, you know. So all interceptions are not created equal. It's when they happen and where they happen.
That's true.
And if you're putting up 25 to 28 points on the scoreboard and you got a solid defense, some interceptions are worth the risk. But like last year, when you're averaging 20 points a game, you had to focus on ball security.
Yeah.
Now, the great thing is Harris just never fumbles hardly. He is great at ball security. And Warren really, you know, we thought in training camp and preseason he might have a problem, but he did really good. So they didn't turn the ball over a lot on the ground, you know, dropping it, fumbling. But after those early interceptions, and Trubisky went through a little string there, as we know. But once Pickett got under control and started protecting the football, they had a really good turnover ratio. So, yeah, I'm thinking 20-some touchdowns, maybe 10 interceptions. I could easily live with that.
Yeah, me too. You know, I think the bare minimum or the bar for a successful season for Pickett would be 2-1. So if he hits, 20 TDs to 10 interceptions, I think that's a good successful year number 2, especially when you look at, I think last season he still ended the season with more interceptions and touchdowns.
Like 7 to 9 or something.
Yeah, it was very minuscule, and a lot of them were very early on in the first few games that he had.
Oh, yeah.
And then he went on a whole long stretch without having one. And so, going from that to 2-1, with a strong running game, with this offensive line built the way that they're being built, and what the Steelers have at the tight end position, and I think they're getting very close to being a very, very good, successful offense. I think they just got to put it together. I think they've got the pieces; they got to put it together. But on the defensive side, go ahead.
Did you get a chance to read my wide receiver article last week?
I have not yet. I did not get a chance.
The Steelers have, a few options to improve their wide receiver position. Right. And there's a couple of guys there. One of them is one of their 2 official visits, pre-draft visits, Jonathan Mingo from Ole Miss. Now, you know one thing about Ole Miss wide receivers, from Derek Metcalf and A.J. Brown. These guys are jacked. They're stacked.
Yeah.
And this kid's 6'1" and like 225, and he is built like a house. And he runs like a 4.4 340.
Oh, wow.
And he is great in the slot. He's super physical, but he's a great blocker. So when I see the Steelers brought him in for a visit, I was so excited because the Steelers don't have a slot guy. They're running Freiermuth out of the slot. They're running Connor Hayward out of the slot, but they don't have a true slot receiver. Mingo would come in and be that slot receiver. So there's a guy that we could really pay attention to, because if they're going with that offensive line and they're going with the power, maybe a lot of outside zone running, and let Canada play off of that, Mingo makes perfect sense. And hopefully everybody kind of overlooks him, because you might get him in the 3rd round.
Yeah, I was about to ask you, where do you think you can get him at? You know,
I think a third round, and in the article I talked about Bryce Ford Wheaton out of WVU. I'm very familiar with him. And he could be in the fourth round. He'd give him a deep threat, a guy who's, would be able to, he's got a huge catch radius, great vertical, 4.38 speed. The only reason he's going to be a fourth round selection is, Martavius Bryant, if you remember him, he played in college with two really good receivers ahead of him.
Right.
So the Steelers was able to get him late. The difference, Bryce Ford Wheaton never has played with a quarterback anywhere close to NFL caliber. His quarterbacks were pitiful during his tenure at WVU. You get him in with a mentor and a leader like Mike Tomlin, because he has some focus issues, but you get him with the right coach like Tomlin, you get him with an accurate quarterback like Pickett, in that offense, I think he could really be a weapon. He's a huge sleeper in the fourth.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And I think the Steelers do need to get somebody for the slot. CA3, Calvin Austin III, he's a guy that's got speed and whatnot, but I went and looked back when the Steelers drafted him at his college tape, and I don't remember seeing him playing the slot a lot. He looked like he was more on the outside.
He was.
And so I don't know if he's a guy that could be an NFL slot receiver.
All these guys that are that small, trying to make a living full-time out of that slot is usually a slot guy might be small like a Edelman or a Welker. But they're stockier. They're put together more. You get these guys that are under 190 pounds, they don't make it a living very long running them underneath routes with them linebackers waiting in there and safeties. So, I think that he can be a real weapon in Canada's offense if used correctly, but I think he'll have to see a predominant amount of action on the outside.
Yeah. No, I agree. And he was a guy that, famously Sauce Gardner had said was the toughest player that he had to guard in college. So maybe perhaps he was the answer to Deontay Johnson's position for the future. Who knows? But they do definitely need a slot guy. But transitioning over to the defense real quick, as far as youth versus experience, you would think the cornerback position, you would want a youthful player due to the speed and agility of the opposition. But for the Pittsburgh Steelers, they've had more of their success coming from experienced cornerbacks like a Joe Hayden, and now drafting a Patrick Peterson, a Cam Sutton later on in his, early on, he was just a slot guy. And so where do you value that aspect as far as the cornerback position, and how do you see the Steelers being successful this time around, as they haven't had the most success drafting a cornerback early in the draft of recent years?
Oh, I've been scared to death of them drafting a corner in the first round because outside of Mel Blount and Rod Woodson, there's nothing to write home about in that first round. Wide receivers, Mel Blount wasn't the first rounder, but I wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt because Terrell Austin has really done a marvelous job with the secondary since he come in. And I think he has a feel for it. They're doing all these mixed coverages and sub packages, and he mixes it up, and he gets guys smart enough to do that. Hayden left, but then you had kind of Cam Sutton, and they bring in Wallace. Wallace had a good year. Now, Wallace got toasted. There was times last year that he got burned by 20 yards on some of the big plays, like in the Buffalo game, the Philly game. He does have an issue with his lack of foot speed, but he's very smart and he's crafty. But I've been wanting to see the Steelers go to a more athletic, faster press secondary where they can mix it up, but play true man, not off man, and take away some of that timing routes and stuff that quarterbacks like Burrow kills the Steelers on. And so I think that they got a guy in Peterson who could be that great mentor to a young guy. But I wouldn't even mind to see him double dip. If they take a corner in that first round, if another one's down there and they pick up an extra pick or two, like we talked about, this is a deep class at corner. And I'd like to see them get more athletic, faster, but not just go pure project. They would get guys that were athletes, Cortez Allen, Artie Burns, get guys that were more athlete than football player. You got to have both.
Yeah. No, I agree. You do have to have both. I think with the Steelers, I echo some of the same things. I'm terrified of them drafting a cornerback in the first round. I almost second guess when they look at one or they bring in one. It's like, man, they're looking at this cornerback. I don't know if he's going to be good this year or not because the Steelers wanted him. But hopefully that changes. The Steelers were bad at drafting quarterbacks until they got Ben, and so from Terry to Ben. So there was a huge gap. You're bad at something until you're not. And for the Steelers, I think that hopefully this year, I think they got the guys to build up a cornerback. You got a Minka Fitzpatrick for leadership. You have a Patrick Peterson for leadership. Terrell Austin, who was a defensive backs coordinator, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. And so, that he's the defensive coordinator there. So you have a lot of that help around him to build up that cornerback if they end up deciding to go cornerback at number 17, which by all indications, and it kind of looks either 17 or 32 that one of those are going to go there. If they double dip, are you seeing a outside corner and a slot guy or two outside guys?
It'll just depend on what falls, what's available. There's some slot guys that are very impressive this year. One guy we talked about a little bit in an article today is I can't remember his name now. It's Gilmore. Stephon Gilmore's brother plays at Marshall. Now, he's smaller like a slot guy, but he can play on the outside. But he's a guy that was very impressive at Marshall. He's got some dog in him. He plays bigger than 5'9" and 188. And, he's got the 4.4 speed. He's not a blazer, but he runs good. And there's a guy that a lot of teams are looking at 5th, 6th round. So that's what I mean. If they double dip, there's some guys in this draft that can come in, maybe be a part of your special team starting out, sub package, but you can develop because they have the measurables. There's a couple of the guys that are 6'2", 6'3", that are football players and still have decent speed, but it's where they went to college. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. The level of competition. And that's knocking them down in a deep draft. So this could be the year where the Steelers could double dip.
I think so too. I think there's a good chance. I think there's a good chance that they double dip in a couple of positions, get a couple of cornerbacks and maybe a couple of offensive linemen or even defensive linemen. It's exciting. It's going to be an exciting time because there's so many positions of need and there's so many different directions that they can go. And, there's so many holes that are still left on this team. I mean, even the outside linebacker position, like we started off with the show with Bud Dupree, it's still a question. I mean, right now it's who Quincy Roche. Did Jameer Jones come back?
Yeah, they're back.
And so it's a huge drop on the edge. And so maybe the Steelers might attack that position as well if they can't come to terms with Bud.
To me, I mean, just sitting back looking at it, defensive line is the biggest hole. I mean, I think they really addressed it with Braden Fehoko.
Right.
I mean, I think that he is going to be able to give them what they've been missing and that run stuffer inside. But, okay, we got him. We got Martavius Adams. But they got to get younger because Cam is, when he's getting to that age that if he hits the wall, it can happen quick. Look at Alulu. Yeah. That injury did a lot to him, but last year he was not even close to the same. I don't want to see that happen with Hayward. And as guys get older, they get more injury prone. So, I mean, hopefully he's still the same player this year, but they got to start getting younger. So, as you said, that's another position that they could, depending on how things fall, they could look to double dip.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it'll be like Christmas morning come late April. So, and I'm looking forward to it. It'll be a good time. We'll get a little long in the tooth, though. So do you have anything coming up you want to let everybody know? I know you said you did an article later that you're waiting to drop.
Yep. And I know that Dave Schofield and Jeffrey Benedict is doing a Vertex on Braden Fehoko.
Uh-huh.
And then I have an article just, getting people familiar with him, his background, what he brings to the table. I think the fans are going to love that Warriors mentality, that intensity. I think that we're all going to really enjoy that. And, everybody gets riled up when TJ Watt does his sack kick and dance and everything. And, fiery players help fire up the whole team and the crowd. And I think when you see Fehoko, he has a lot of that in him. So that's the article. I don't know if it's posted tomorrow or Wednesday.
Got you. Well, y'all stay tuned for that. That's still on behindthesteelcurtain.com. So go make sure you read all those articles and all the other ones that are coming out. For me, y'all won't hear from me again until Saturday at noon on the audio side only, where I'll be talking the state of the Steelers. So that being said, Shannon, take us out.